Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of our podcast. Whether you're listening to us or you're watching us, welcome back. As you can see, we are missing one of our co-hosts. That's why we have like an extra glass for her. We're definitely missing her, Panda. Hope you're doing good. Sorry you can join us today. But today we have
a special guest.
A very special guest. And it's our friend Tina.
And my cousin.
Yes. Tina's like family at this point. Super, super excited to have her on. So I think we should start with like a cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. So very honored.
So a little backstory on Tina. I was trying to remember like the first time that you and I met. And I couldn't really remember. But I feel like I've known you like at least 10 years at this point.
I think over 10 years. Because I moved
in
here
college. When you moved back is when I think you guys first met.
No, I've met you before when I came to visit California.
Oh, okay.
So you guys were in college.
Yeah.
And but I've moved back about 10 years already. But when I would visit, because I was living in Missouri at that time, I would come during the summer. I remember my first time meeting you was when we were here. I was here for 4th of July. Remember on 80th and you guys barbecued or something?
Oh,
yeah, and you
okay.
were there.
That was the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was me and Chrissy. I think we were at the barbecue.
What was it, Chrissy or Pauline?
It was one of them.
Because one of them asked me if he was
Your
boyfriend.
Yes.
I told you that. I never told you that.
Yes.
I think at a lot of the family gatherings, I think a lot of people kind of like, is he family or is he like dating someone that's in the group? Like,
he's always there.
yeah, it's always like a question mark, like
Yes.
where I fit into everything.
And so, yeah, I think I don't know how many years back was that?
Because I remember you came a couple of years in a row for 4th of July because we would always have something, whether it's something at the house or us going to watch fireworks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Something that I feel like I've always really appreciated, like in our friendship, is just like the conversations that we had, that we always have, and I feel like that's why it makes so much sense to have you on, because I feel like we talk so much about like trauma and like mental health and boundaries and taking care of yourself, prioritizing yourself, healing yourself, and I feel like this is always like a constant theme.
Yeah.
And you're probably like one of like the few friends that's like not a social worker or like not a clinician or like not like in the field that I'm able to have like these conversations with. So I feel like I've really, really enjoyed that with us. And I feel like just like your energy, like your vibe has always been like, just like really good to be around. I've always felt like that connection with you. So I'm just really excited to like have you on and like kind of see where the conversation goes. And yeah. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about how you guys are related?
Okay. It becomes a little confusing, but if we actually break down like each step on how we are connected, it'll make sense at the end. So my mom was dating someone in Cambodia. So this is the story I heard from my mom.
Okay.
So she was dating someone in Cambodia.
I can't wait to compare the stories.
His brother is Pathom. So do you know that story?
No.
No.
And,
Okay.
and her Tom is my grandpa, so my dad.
Okay, can you translate a little bit?
So Pathom is it's like Big Daddy, but then he was like a second father kind of.
Okay.
For me.
Okay.
It's just like, you know how you have like a big mama?
Uh-huh.
They had a second dad.
Like a mom and a dad.
Kind of like how in other cultures it would translate to like a godparent maybe.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah. So my mom was dating his brother, but it didn't work out, and so they had stayed connected when they made it to the States. So the States, which is the U.S., because of basically the war that took place
It was a genocide, in Cambodia in the 1960s, 70s, during the Vietnam War time. Cambodia had its own civil war. The Khmer, we call it Khmer Gahom, which is red,
American
Khmer Rouge.
Yeah, the American.
So everyone fled the
country
with nothing because they weren't it was just so last minute, and then they all got separated from families and ended at the like borders and the refugee camps, and so
different encampments.
Different encampments, and so a lot of the families just became each other's families and took care of each other, and so
okay, so that's perfect because having everyone trying to stay connected. My mom and I told him I'm just gonna continue with what I call him. So for them to kind of keep that connection, she offered her last name to him. So my mom kept her last name, never changed her like identity or name or anything. So she kept with what she had.
Was that common,
So
or did people kind of like adopt?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but she was like, okay, like because their identities, like a lot of people's identity got wiped out, like a race, and so for them to stay connected, she actually gave him her last name, and then I don't know how that worked out when they come over here. So they had to reapply or just apply for citizenship. So
not
like
citizenship, they're aliens.
Aliens, yeah.
Like
So-
because they're refugees,
Yeah,
so
they're-
then
So
you're
because there's no
applying for like a
record,
status or something.
They're aliens. They're
Yeah.
called aliens.
alien, yeah.
I hate that word.
Yeah.
I have all of their paperwork and stuff too, but and I don't know if they background check or not.
No, they didn't.
Yeah,
Because
so
there
you
was
could
no.
choose any name.
Yeah, so they just made it up.
Well, and it's just like a lot. It's like a big population that's like
Yeah.
fleeing
Yeah.
their home and like coming to the U.S. So it's just like they're probably trying to like
Yeah.
do it
So
as quickly as
the
possible.
goal for Khmer Rouge was to destroy anything educational, any history, any music, anything art. Like we come from a rich Khmer empire that was built in I don't know all the back into like
Something
the 12th,
AD?
yeah,
Like,
12th, I don't know,
it dates
1200
before that.
century, but our people built like, which is now called Angkor Wat, is one of the like 7 wonder ruins in the world, and so we come from like royalty, and
Like your ancestors.
our ancestors come from royalty, and so it's sad that our own people wanted to destroy everything, and
So disheartening.
yeah, it's become a communist like dictatorship, kind of like a Hitler, and so they were just trying to find any kind of identity to get out, and so yeah, that's how it happened.
Yeah.
And
So your mom
Oh,
and
the last name.
yeah.
So she gave him the last name.
which
and
is
it's
Pronounced?
translated. It's pronounced Mia, and in our language that means gold. And
yes.
it's crazy because I
Mm.
didn't find out until I was in high school.
And I
But it
remember in
actually-
high
I
school you would
connected it.
always like say that like in like pictures or
Because
stuff or
I would
like
say
quotes.
Ms.
Yeah.
I would pronounce it very
the same.
English.
And I
Yeah.
never knew
Yeah.
where the gold came from.
Yeah.
I thought it was just like jewelry gold
Yeah.
or something, or like I don't know. Like I'm not figuring this out until now. So that's
Yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah, and so that's like he kept that last name, and then my mom made it to the States. She went to a few different states here in the U.S., and then she made her way to the West Coast. She California, and then I believe her first place was somewhere in SF.
Yes.
It was somewhere in SF, and then that didn't work out because I remember her saying that it was she couldn't do the hills, it was too much.
It's a tenderloin.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that she was.
But I mean, back then it must have been so different
Yes.
than what it is today.
Oh no, it's still the same. I just drove past it today. I was like, oh my goodness. It's like,
No, but I'm saying like back then when they like migrated, I'm sure the Tenderloin looked so different.
I'm not sure.
no,
I'm
it's
not
there was a
too
lot of
familiar.
crackheads
Yeah.
around. Yeah, homeless people.
Yeah.
It was dirty.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was her.
Also historically, it's always kind of been that way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, that's how.
Oh yeah, and then so that didn't work out. So she was like, okay, she's going to the East Bay across the water, which is Oakland Bay area.
Yes.
So that is where I am originally
Across the
from.
bridge.
Across
Yes.
the bridge.
Oakland.
And then I guess I don't know, her relationships and everything didn't really work out too well. And all
With mom?
that.
Your
My
mom.
mom's relationships,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Her
And
husband, or what kind of relationship?
or just like relationships like in general, I
With
guess.
people?
With people.
Oh, okay.
And just like I don't know, for back then, I guess they were all trying to find each other and stay connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was hard because they were they didn't really know English. They were still learning how to speak the language. They came out here to basically have a new life, but then it was like a bit of a struggle.
Of course.
And so,
and I'm sure there was like culture shock, like you left
different.
everything you knew, and then you come to like a new place, and like you probably don't even look like half the people that were here at the time, and I could just like imagine. I mean, I feel like we still go through this today.
Yeah, we go through it today.
So I can just imagine like all these years back then, decades back then.
Yeah, so she was trying to find anyone
like her
that she knew, so trying to connect with people out here, trying to figure out if everyone or the people like family and friends made it out here to the States. And so she tried calling around. I don't know, she just gave the last name, because our last name is kind of, I won't say it's rare, but
not common.
It's not common, but it is when you get into like the entertainment industry. It's very common, which is crazy. But then like just every day to day, like not that many people have our last name, and if they do, there's like a connection somewhere. And so she was saying, oh, have you seen him, or like do you know where he's at? And then I guess someone she reached out to when back in the East Coast had said that, oh yeah, he was like last seen or last heard of somewhere else and stuff. So I guess they did their part and found a number, sent it over to my mom, and then that's how
she was calling back home.
No, on the East Coast.
In the East Coast, because that's where a lot of people went.
Yeah, so when she first came out here to the U.S., I have to split it up. I just say the States. So the U.S., she resided in the East Coast, different parts of the East Coast, and like Tennessee, was it Georgia, D.C.
South. Oh, D.C. Okay.
She was like in the East Coast, then made her way to the South a bit, and then ended up coming to California. So California is the only West Coast state that she came to. So I guess she called to people in the East Coast, and then they kind of knew where he was and connected and gave the number. She called and then reached out, and then he came. I know that he came to the California. And then the city, or SF. Sorry, oh my god, I need to stop with the slide.
Not California, the city.
The city. City is referenced as to San Francisco.
Yes.
The town is referenced as Oakland.
Yeah, and so that's where.
Okay.
You could tell your
part. So my part is my mom was an orphan, like all her family. From what I remember, her dad was in the military or so that was definitely the first family that they would go and raid the homes and kill. Where anybody that has any kind of like background with like military or like any status, high status, any famous people, singers, any of that they were the first. Any doctors, teachers, first to go. And then they take all the family and they separate the kids and the white and the women, and they take the men and then make them like get into different camps where like they're literally like they're slaves, and they put them in the rice fields, and they're like in like this they're like in this crazy prison, like, and they're just they don't get food, they're just literally like brainwashing them. And so my mom was able to escape, and when she ended up at the she survived and went through and ended at the refugee camp. My grandfather, Pa, he was there, and his first wife, this is before he met Yaitud, because him and Yaitud met in the States.
Okay.
So Yailini,
which is
Leela's real mom,
which
is my aunt that I'm very close to.
Which my mom knew before she even came to the States.
So your mom knew Yailini because of that in Cambodia, in the refugee camp. So that was his first wife, and she is like very difficult. She's still alive. Out of all our elders, she's alive, and your mom's alive, but like rest in soul, my grandfather passed away. Yaitud, his second wife, which is like our grandmother that raised us.
Yaitud is my matom?
Yes.
Okay, I call her matom,
so that's her godmother.
Godmother, yeah.
And that's my grandma. I consider her as like my grandma. Like even though like my grandfather's first wife is my grandmother, she just never had a relationship with us. She never took care of us. She was very always about herself. And when she met my mom, you know, she was a fortune teller, and she knows like she has herself on a very high pedestal. She carries herself on a very high pedestal. Mentally, I feel like, you know, she is not, you know, in always the best state. And so my mom saw her, and the lady told her that her parents are all, you know, her family's all like dead. So she's like, you can stay with us. You can, you know, you can come in and be a part of our family. And that's how my mom was able to get adopted through my grandfather, which is your dad. And then so at the time it was my mom. Lila was, I think, a baby, my aunt, and then it was my I have two other aunts that are my through my first grandmother, Mimi, adopted grandmother. So she had 3 kids plus my mom, 3 daughters plus my mom, and then when they came here, they were basically displaced and put in San Francisco in the Tenderloin area, and
they went the right way.
I don't know the whole transition, but my mom, they got settled in San Francisco. I don't know.
It was like select few locations that all the Cambodian people settled in.
Yeah, so like
it wasn't
the East Coast, like Boston, Massachusetts
my mom was
area.
there too.
Yeah.
Maine. That's why Sophan was born. My mom went up to Maine too. She made her way through 13 colonies, y'all. I'm telling you.
But so then I was born in the in the Tenderloin area. That's where my mom met my dad, and so that's how my mom also got the last name Ms. And she just lost a lot of her identity. She just made up a name. Whatever people was telling her, she just kind of went with it. And my mom was probably only in like her teens, late teens.
When all this was going on.
Yeah, when she came to the United States. And they have a lot of trauma.
Of course.
They don't talk about it.
Yes.
You know, it brings a lot of flashback triggers, and they were just in survival mode, I think. And then when you get put in the system doesn't help you. Like, they don't help you with mental health. They were doing like a lot of the elders that came to the United States from Cambodia. You know, they put them on the system with welfare and like Social Security, but they don't teach them to better their lives. They don't give them the
to
skills
be like self-sufficient,
and you know, it's like you have to figure it out on your own, or you know, they came with not knowing the language, and they were in trauma. You know, they got everything taken away from them, and so my mom met my dad in San Francisco, and that wasn't the best for her. He also was very mean, and manipulative, controlling, abusive, all of the above. And we get a lot of that in our culture. But that is how our connection is with our family.
When did you two start? Or you and Lori and Laura like start to kind of connect? And
Lori and Laura. Okay, so I bounced around a lot. We moved from San Francisco, and then we lived in San Pablo, Richmond area with our other cousins, Liz and Pauline and Christy, for a little bit because they bought a house there. Their dad was able to kind of get the funds from everybody and kind of helped put back then buy a house, and he was very smart about that. Not a lot of people knew about that, or how to do it. So we all.
That's like amazing.
Yeah, we all
come to a whole new country and just try to like figure shit out.
Yeah, but you have to also understand, like, when they were in Cambodia, they had their own lives and they had certain jobs and all that stuff too. And so they were small. That some people were able to come and like pick up those skills here and figure it out, but most of the time, they just got stuck in the system.
Right.
And then my mom was able to have the strength to leave my dad. I didn't know him growing up. I just heard like he was very abusive. The community would talk about him and to say like he was never good to my mom, and he just was like very violent. And my mom was just the sweetest person who just did it all. She never talked about it. She never complained. And most of her life, she just never really talked about her struggles.
I feel like I think we live in a very different time where it's like Me Too, and you know, people talk about like domestic violence, but I think for a really long time, these were topics that were just so taboo.
And suppressed.
You were just kind of you were just kind of meant to stay with someone regardless if like they were abusive, and just like stick it out. I think in our culture it's very similar. There's that similarity where you just kind of like, especially if you have like children with someone, I feel like that just adds like another layer on top of it, and it's really like frowned upon to like separate or like divorce. So
but he was very violent, and I didn't know a lot of these stuff. I knew he was violent, but not to the extent a lot. But you know, a lot of things as time in now and as an adult, a lot of things started opening up more, and that also caused a lot of my trauma. But yeah, and then long story short, my mom also moved to San Jose for a little bit, and that's where she met my brother Brian's dad, and that was not a good relationship either at that time. He used her. My mom used to actually be a voice translator for all the Cambodian movies, like the Thai movies, the Chinese movies. So she would do the voiceovers and translate them into, you know, our language. And back in the day, like they used to watch these VHS.
Oh my god!
Yes, it'd be like 20 episodes on one tape. It'd be like, you know, so those are memories.
I love watching those.
Those memories, yeah. Like I used to watch it with Yuthui, which is your godma. Like we all used to, Anyway, so those are good childhood memories that I remember. But anyways, my mom went there and like it just didn't work out. She had Brian, and then I think so. My mom had mental illness. She had schizophrenia, but we didn't know what that meant at all.
Of course not.
People were afraid of that. And when she had her,
they didn't understand.
They didn't understand it. So when she had her moments, it was
like
really
crisis.
Bad. When she had like really bad crisis moments, like it was bad. And it was, for me as a kid, I was embarrassed about it because I was like, I don't know what's going on. I just hear people talking about my mom all the time, you know. And
everyone's just so quick to be like,
stay
this
away.
person's like crazy, you know what I mean? Where like these aren't terms we use like today, or we try not to.
Right. And then so when she, but I think it all really started when she had my brother Brian, and she had postpartum depression, and we didn't know what that was either, right? So on top of that, she didn't have schizophrenia at that time yet. She only had the postpartum, and I think because of like the heartbreaks, all the heartbreaks, I'm very big on believing like that can really kill someone.
Absolutely.
Like a heartbreak with my dad, with just picking the wrong
no
man.
time to cope.
No
and
time to cope. Yeah, and then so and then my mom had her breakdown. That was her first episode. She took me and my brother and drove us in the car and went to Washington D.C. She said that
from San Francisco.
From San Jose.
From San Jose.
She said that she was going to go to Washington D.C. so that George Bush, at that time senior, was going to help us out. That's the first sign that everybody should have known that was like a mental illness thing. Right?
How were you and like Brian like processing that?
Brian was a baby, a newborn baby.
Okay.
I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, so you don't even know what's going on right now.
I just remember we had the station wagon and went across the country. I just remember it was a road trip, and then we ended up going to be living in like this shelter home and like just meeting people, random people. It was just weird. And then one day she put me in school, and then
out there,
and then we were living in a shelter home, a group home, and then one day she didn't come, and then a social worker came to pick me up, and they told me that my mom was sick and she was in the hospital, and then me and my brother were gonna go live with a family for a while. So we were in foster care. I have foster parents in West Virginia, Falls Church, yeah. So we were there for a little bit, and that was the first time I actually was in like an American home, like whatever is a normal American home. Like we never had Christmas, birthdays, and like all that stuff. That was the first for me. It was just weird.
You're probably like what is going on?
Culture shock, yeah. And then long story short, like my grandpa found out that we were in the East Coast. Your grandpa. Baton finally found where we were at, and then they basically took guardianship of my mom, and that's how we ended up coming back to California. And at that time, they were already living in East Oakland on 82nd.
Okay, because I used to live there. Right?
So we all.
How long were you in DC for?
less than a year.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a very short
But
period.
it must have. I mean, when
But
you're
at that age,
in that,
it was
yeah.
like forever, right? And I still stay connected with my foster parents now. They
That's
check
amazing.
in.
And you had a really positive experience.
I had a positive experience. I feel like throughout my life, I've had a lot of hardship, but I was always very protected. I feel like God has always protected my family through a lot of the things, because you know we didn't turn out to be the product of our environment.
Right.
We overcame a lot of our obstacles because I felt like we were just protected.
And I feel like you're very connected to like your faith because
I am
of like
very,
all these
and
hardships.
that's the reason why I'm very spiritual and connected and firm believer of my faith, because of where I'm at now. I wouldn't be where I'm at now if I didn't believe in my faith. And you know, people who you least expect come in your life that are
At the right time.
At the right time.
In the right moment, in the right place.
Yes. And you're like, okay, this is a God gift sent to me, you know, like, and nothing.
It's like a divine intervention. She's reminding me of church right now.
But anyway, so then,
But you grew up. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna kind of.
Yes.
But you, in your culture, you grew up like being Buddhist.
Buddhist.
And then, but
our
you're
country, not. Our country is
majority Buddhism.
Majority Buddhism. I came from a Hinduist background and was converted into Buddhism, and like it's a strong, predominantly like our temples are all like
Buddhist temples.
Temples.
I mean, we've gone to Cambodia New Year.
There's like big
statues.
idols and statues that they worship, and you know I am the opposite though.
When do you feel like things kind of took a turn and you started connecting to like a different faith?
So that wasn't until I moved to Missouri.
Okay, so later on in life.
Yes.
But even in those moments where you're kind of like at very important like stages in your life, and like where it comes to like childhood development, like you still felt like some type of connection or like someone's watching you, or no you're just like you look back at it and you're like someone was like taking care of us.
Because at that time I'm like, you know, I was just, I didn't, so, and now reflecting back, I didn't have a childhood. I was always an adult. I always had to be responsible
for someone else.
And even when I was a kid, I had to take care of my mom, or my brother, or, you know, and so I started like where I'm at now in my life, fast forward, like understanding like, oh, what an inner child is and all that stuff, and self-love and self-care and stuff.
And healing your inner child and childhood trauma.
Childhood trauma. But so when we got back to Oakland, 82nd, that was I was just like, we lived in a Cambodian compound.
It's a different culture.
It was a different culture because
you were just hopping from culture to culture.
Yes, and so like it was a 5 apartment complex, right? So there's 4 units on one building, and then there was one house in the back, right? It was a big house.
It was a house.
And that's the house that the twins' mom lived in. Yeah,
I thought we were in the unit.
You guys were in the unit at one point, but then you guys also lived in the big house.
I don't remember that.
And you're how old are you at the time?
So I was already, I think, in 1st grade by that time.
I'm Brian's age.
And you
So
were.
I remember that house. I just don't recall all.
You must have been really young.
You guys were toddlers.
Babies.
They
Yeah,
were
I see photos.
babies.
We were like
Yeah.
babies. So
They
like
were
my
babies.
first and second birthday.
And
So
so-
that was my first house.
But like living in the apartment complex, so it was like my grandpa, my grandma. So that's so at this point, growing up, I've never really remembered my grandma from his first wife. I've always remembered my grandma, his second wife, raising us, because she's always like taking care of us and stuff. She doesn't have any kids, so we
Both
were her
of them were
kids.
like amazing.
Yeah.
Like, the best parents.
Like like my grandpa is like so patient, and he was also in the military, and like so he's just like
Back home.
yeah.
Did he serve with my mom? Because my mom was in there, but my mom was in the military back home.
Yeah.
But she was in there.
Another fun fact that I didn't know.
She was. Oh really? She was. I think she was the nurse. She was one of the nurses.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Helping with the wounds and all that.
Yeah. So he knows how to speak Lao, Vietnamese, Khmer, like
Oh my
you
God.
know what
He
Thai.
taught me
He
how to
knows
count.
all
He
these
knew a lot.
languages.
He knew
a lot.
He knew so much, but he was like this big. Like he looked like he was Samoan or Tongan. Like he was big. And this is Leela's dad, my aunt. Like that's why I'm so close to
Leela, our cousin. That's her dad.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's my aunt. That's why she's my aunt, because she's my mom's sister. And so I was like, I just remember like our culture is not very like about affirmation, about like affection, or about any of that. But they were just like always like we would all sleep on the floor together. Like we all lived in like two apartments. I mean two bedroom apartment with like 3 families, and like my mom, me, and Leela and my brothers shared one room. My grandma and grandpa shared one room, and then we would rent a room for someone, and they would sleep out in the living room, and they would have a bed, and then like we would have like this mat, and we would all of this.
That's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Sleeping on a mat in the living room, even if you're on the floor, just the same.
Yeah, and so like because when we moved to the comp on 82nd in Oakland, our home were open to everybody. Like we all just like
we're open for everyone.
The community.
The community. Like we would eat together. The kids would all run out and play together. Me and Slovan was so her sister, that's my age. We would go outside and play with like no shoes on. We running out in there and we would play like making like we would play house, right? And we make out of dirt and rocks and stuff, food and grass and stuff, like making food, and we're pretending we were playing house, and you know, like all the other boy cousins and stuff. There was the on 85th, there was the projects there, and so they would come and we would play like, you know, tag or like dodgeball, and like back in the day, we were just so simple. Like
kids were kids.
Kids were kids.
There was no iPad. There was no internet.
Play outside.
Like,
you know what's so funny that you mentioned that?
Yeah.
My great niece, that's probably like 2 years old now. She's kind of like iPad generation as well. But they came to visit one day, and we don't have I don't have any children. Like we haven't had children in a long time, so we don't have toys for them or anything like that. My mom like gets a water bottle and like puts like little rocks in it, and then like starts like shaking the water bottle, and like that was like her favorite toy in like the world. She had to she was like crying to take it because I was like, well, let's leave something for her to play with next time. She like takes it with her, and it just like reminds me of how like, you know, like about like you can just be so creative, and like you don't need a whole lot to like be happy or just like, you know, take care of your children. I don't know. But anyways, I'm so sorry.
That's how our connection, and that's how we grew up. Literally playing, and my grandma, her godmom would like make and I say when we're poor, right? But we always was fed. We always had rice. We always had the basics, and like we would always had enough to feed the whole village. And when it says it takes a village to raise a family, or raise a kid, raise a family, like they would like, you know, come and like me and someone would be playing, and then like Ye would be like, come and eat, like, and she would feed us on the same hand in the same bowl, like here you guys go, and that's how we were raised.
Yeah.
And that's why we were so close.
I think I got it's not an it's not like an OCD thing. I think I got a trait. I'm gonna call it a trait because I don't know what to call it. I got it from her, and I remember so vividly because we grew up poor. We grew up like not having like rationing our foods and everything, and so we went to that temple because my parents and my godparents were like, they would go to the temple every week and then like celebrate the New Year at like the temple like further in like a different city and stuff, like Stockton. And so I remember, I can't remember what temple, but we were at a temple, and then my home was like very shy and very soft spoken. Is how I remember her. And so she was sitting with the kids with us while they were doing prayers. We were sitting at a table, and we was like, okay, we're not supposed to eat before they pray, but we were hungry. And so she would so she made us like all a plate, and so we were sitting there eating, and then she finished like everything, nothing left on the plate. And then, so I saw that, and I was like, oh my God. She's like, you didn't finish. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, and then I sat there and I thought about it. I was like, oh my God, I didn't, because like there's like little pieces. And so ever since I was a kid, I would like literally like empty out my plate. And so when I'm out in public, I kind of stop myself, because I'm like, wait, people might think
you're
I'm
still
crazy.
like that. I feel like
I'm still like that, but I'm very subtle about it. And so I like, if I'm at work, I will finish everything from my plate. If I'm at home, I try to do my best to finish everything.
And Lori like will enjoy a meal.
Every single
like
bite.
Like a meal and a drink.
And I take my time to eat. I think
I will, I will eat 2 plates. Like I'm like, and Lori's like still like a quarter into her plate. Like she really likes to like enjoy her food.
It's like a gift to even have food on your plate. And so I don't know. It was a trait that I picked up from her. She was like, yeah, like like finish your whole like
we
don't
always
waste.
grew up don't waste.
Don't waste. Yeah.
And there was times where I was like that too. And then I remember, I think it was Pauline, our other cousin, was like, Tina, it's okay. We made it now. We don't have to eat it all. And I was like, you're right, but it's just still like wasteful.
Yeah.
It really, I think it plays, like, you know, like the way that you are today as an adult, I think like a lot of those experiences like come into play.
Yeah.
It's part of your identity. And when you were sharing the story, like it made me think of one time when we were eating, I don't remember the occasion or anything, but I remember, we were sitting down, I was sitting down with Soban and we were eating, which is your sister. And I think like we didn't get like the utensils yet or something, and like Soban was like super hungry. And like when you did the whole like rice thing, like Soban was eating with like the rice. And then she's like, sorry, she's like, I'm just so hungry.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know, like I like stuff like that because I feel like it, I think that's why we like connect, because I feel like there's a lot of like correlation or like similar experiences like in our culture too, you know, where like you're just trying to like survive and just like make it through in a place that's not really like your home, you know. But I think it's amazing that regardless of all of those struggles and like throughout all the years, like you guys have like remained super close. Because a lot of people are not like that. Like people just like grow up and like.
Well, I feel like we grow closer. Over time.
Yeah. Oh well. Trust me, it was a big gap in after that. So that was that part. So I don't know if we want to stay here or we can move forward into time.
Tell us what made you. Do you want to fast forward to Missouri, or do you want to talk about anything before Missouri? Or like what made you move to
so like I grew up in East Oakland in the heart of the Deep East. So I was like
Deep East Oakland.
Deep East Oakland, and so you know people don't realize where we come from.
My hood, it's my hood.
But people don't realize where we come from, and they're like, you guys grew up in East Oakland. What y'all know about it? Like you really don't want us to get hood because we can get hood, but we carry ourselves very well. You know what I'm saying? Like we.
I'm very posh in public.
Like I'm just like.
You don't know where I'm from.
I'm very street smart because of how I grew up.
We had to be.
We had to be. And like, but also like, and because of where I grew up, I'll forget where I came from, and that's why I have so much ambition. I have a lot of ambitious. I have a lot of like, that's the driving factor.
Yes, you always want more for yourself.
I always wanted more because like, growing up in East Oakland, like, more times of memories were like hardships of being a kid and struggling with living with a mom that had mental illness. Because after a certain part of in time, like everyone moved out of that apartment complex. They all moved on in separate ways and lived in like other parts of Oakland. And my mom was still there because she did have a big mental breakdown, and like people were scared of her. Like she was out there and she was just speaking crazy. She got into fights, physical fights with other people and stuff, and you know, blaming people of like stealing things, and it's just like, so it was just hard. She didn't trust anybody. And then like I lived like behind closed doors and in a lot of darkness and saw a lot of like evilness, and I just as a kid like was too embarrassed to tell people what was going on behind closed doors. I didn't know what was going on either. Like she would just tell me like crazy shit as a kid, and you know, but I was smart enough, which is weird as a kid, to observe and knew like that wasn't normal, and I didn't feed off of it. Like I didn't let her shape me. If anything, I was like trying to. I was like an adult already, like in the mindset.
Grew up fast.
Yeah, I had to grow up very fast. Like I was like figuring out how to
I think
get out of that lifestyle.
The roles kind of reverse a little bit, where you're like kind of like the mom, and like you're taking care of like someone that's supposed to be taking care of you.
And then Brian, you know, he was just like such an innocent kid and just always wanting to play outside and stuff. But I remember like my mom didn't have a car, and so we would go to like the grocery store, or like when I couldn't go. And like she would come back, and at this point, fast forward, I'm like almost a teenager at this point. So got into middle school, and I started like my mom, you know, would give me like $5 to take bus, but I would like, and this is like a week. Back then, $5 to take the bus, a lot. Yeah. Like it was like 50 cents or something to take the bus right to school, and I was on 82nd. I was going to Elmhurst, and that was.
I've like passed by there so many times.
So we all went to like So on 82nd and 85th, there was a Highland Huron Elementary School. So like all the Cambodian, because I remember we used to all walk to school together and come back home, and you know, like we all went in the same class for the most part, you know. And but when everyone started moving away, like, and then I got into middle school, like I was like, I would take that money so I can buy lunch instead of take the bus, and so
you would walk.
I would walk from 82nd to 98th. And so,
as a child, in the middle of DP Soto,
and that was normal. I didn't know anything different. Like I didn't know, like going, like I didn't know. I like the people that I saw was normal, right? I didn't know they were drug dealers and like gangs and like.
You don't know any of that as a child.
But I grew up fast for that reason. You know, like as I started developing and getting more mature, like guys started wanting to talk to me. The people I was hanging out with, you know, we were like, you know, young. Naive kids, right? And so I was also starting to work. So my dad's side of the family. So my dad will come in and out of my life, like you know, sporadically, like a phone call here or there. But I never really saw him.
You didn't grow up with him.
I didn't grow up with him at all. I grew up with mom, and then, but his side of the family, his aunt, his uncle, and his aunt and my cousin, they owned a restaurant, Cambodianas, in Berkeley, and so they were one of like more of the successful Cambodians in the community, and so they would come and take me like during vacation and stuff to go and and stay with them, and they lived in San Pablo at that time. So Liz and my other cousin Lorraine, Lorraine is on my dad's side, Liz and stuff is on my mom's side still, right? But they all knew each other because they went to school and stuff together, and so I would be able to like learn, like when I go to the restaurant, like learn how to like earn money, like helping the waiters out in the back cutting lemons or pouring water or whatever their order is, and so like at the end of the night they would give me like $1 or $2 for, you know, helping out from their tip. Or like if you want to vacuum, you get $5. I was like, yep, I'm the first one to go vacuum it. You know, $5 is a lot, right?
Yes,
and so back then I was only like, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12, you know, every time they took me to go visit for, you know, when I was out of school and stuff, and then like they will buy me an outfit. So I got with a friend one new outfit. Oh, another thing is her mom used to make our outfits.
Yes, I've heard the stories before.
So her mom is a
seamstress,
and like we would all go to the flea market all together. That was like our big trip.
To buy fabrics. We don't buy clothes.
We buy fabric. We went into.
My clothes are custom, baby.
We all fit in her mom's 4Runner and the red 4Runner. It'd be like 10 of us in there, and
yeah, I was rolling deep.
I know all the kids was in the back trunk. We weren't even supposed to be in the back trunk. We were all sitting in the back trunk. Yeah, but it was literally only like a 5-minute ride from where to the Coliseum flea market. But man, we would go and just like get toys and fabric.
That place is still like a hot spot. They make like the best micheladas that I've had in my life.
And so, but yeah, and that's how I like start learning, and then like get into the wrong crowd, right? And then, you know, instead of going to school, we start. That's a lot. Like that's how many, almost 10, 20 blocks. I don't know. I can't do the math right now. But sometimes I don't even make it to certain blocks because then I end up staying at my friend's house and skipping school.
On the way, a little detour moment.
Yeah, or like, you know, we're like into like the music videos at that time in the 90s. And we just want to like learn how to make these choreographies.
Not the TikToks movement
back then.
That was the TikTok back then. Someone would teach me choreographies and we would record it. Remember?
Just watching like MTV, BET, and like the box. I don't know if you guys remember the box, but yeah, just wasting time. Like
kids being kids.
And then like slowly got into like, you know, alcohol, drugs, hanging out with the wrong people, and then life be life, and I got really. I don't think I've told you guys this, but I was a rape victim. Yeah, and that's why I ended up going to live with my dad. So I had too much freedom, right? From having too much freedom in the world, getting exposed to too much stuff, to going to live with my dad that I've never really known or met. I've seen him probably a few times, less than a handful of times in my life. He got remarried in Modesto with someone that came straight from high school. Like he did an arranged marriage from, you know, when my stepmom was like 18 from high school. And then they had my sister. So I have my mom's side. I have my brother Brian, Adele, and Joshua. And then my dad's side, he has total of 5 kids, I think, and me 6 kids. But at that time, it was just they just had a daughter. and then which is my
Which is
sister.
your older? Is she your older sister?
I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest and the only child from my mom and my dad's side. But I have 8 siblings total.
Wow.
And so when I went to live with him, they had a boy, my brother Patrick, and then Nico, like back to back. And like he is the total opposite. He's old school, dominant, controlling. Like I'm the oldest. I have to stay in the house, watch the kids, cook, clean, all this stuff. I had to like pick up and learn how to do all this stuff and get good grades on top of that, straight A's. And like he would just come home being drunk, gambling, and so he had. He used to work for DoubleTree in hotels and stuff in San Francisco, and then he moved to like he did a lot of property maintenance, and so he was making good money, right? And then he moved to.
Did you go to the casino?
Yeah, like the thing is, like my dad.
I feel
my
like
dad thought he was
in for, like it wasn't in. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Like it was like the spot to go for adults.
Not just casinos, but they gamble at the house.
At the house, yeah.
You know, every second, man.
Yeah.
They'd be playing cards,
money out.
We'd be sleeping next to them, and then
we would
wake
fall
up,
asleep watching them play.
And
they would have us cut the card. Yeah. That was our like we were there to look.
Good luck. And then we would wake up and go to school, come back, they're still playing.
Still playing. Yeah.
When would they sleep?
No, they took naps.
Oh.
They did sleep.
A little power nap moment.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like.
They would rotate, so like they would like somebody would come and take their place for them while they go and take a nap, and then like rotate and then take that stillness, yeah. And so so my dad like it was really bad because everything that all the gossips people told me about my dad, I saw firsthand. He was so abusive to my stepmom. He was so abusive to my little sister, and she was just only a kid. Like he used to beat the shit out of her. And just because she was a kid, being a kid, and like my dad used to back then was someone in San Francisco.
Hello everyone. Sorry.
Technical difficulties again, but we're back and we're just gonna pick up where we left off.
We're gonna try to do our best to resume. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I think we left off where I was. Where I transitioned in my life, where I went to live with my dad and found out like his true character, and I was going through a lot of firsthand experiencing seeing physical abuse, dealing with seeing my dad.
Someone who was a stranger.
Up until this point. Yeah. He lived. I moved in, and like my stepmom and my sister was a toddler, and my stepmom had my brother Patrick and Nico back to back. So then I was responsible for like taking care of the home, and like from coming from like living with my mom and having all the freedom to like no freedom at all, and like being the oldest and having to like take care of the kids, the household, and go to school and have good grades, and then coming home and dealing with seeing all of the drama and all of my dad being.
I'm so sorry I'm laughing. We have like fur babies that are like walking around everywhere.
So cute.
But while Tina's kind of like sharing a little bit about this, and I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I think again we kind of go into this like reoccurring theme of like how a lot of this is who you are. Like this is like the type of person that you are to like everybody in your life. Like you're a very like nurturing person to like all of us.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of these negative experiences were very traumatic and are very like disappointing, I think, because you were a child. That wasn't your responsibility to like take care of anybody's home. Like you're like assuming like a mom figure role, and I think that wasn't your job.
There's a culture thing too, right? Because like my dad's very traditional, old school, and as being a Cambodian, first generation born here in the States, like the pressure of being able to succeed and get your family out of poverty, and but then yet we're, it's like it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because it's like you want to thrive but you can't because of your environment that's bringing you down. my dad was very he was a gambler and alcoholic, and I think the turning point in my life living there was like I even at that time at my age being 13, 14, knowing like this is not the life I should be living. It's not. This is not normal. This is not right. You know, and I was, you know, he used to hit my, you know, siblings a lot, and they were just kids, and like, you know, he was very verbally, emotionally abusive, and he was abusive to my stepmom, and all these things like people talked about in the community about my dad. Like I saw it firsthand. You know?
And I'm sure that you're like in middle school at this point, and you're like going to school with other children,
and people talk,
and they're like, you're probably like, they're not going through this, like,
or if they were going through it, we all feel like, you know, everyone's going through something, right? In our culture,
everyone's going through a struggle.
We all went through a struggle, but like but people talk, and I think in that type of community, people are always talking about other people and what they're going through because they don't want to deal with their own
You're
stuff.
deflecting.
Yeah. And so, you know, my dad always caused scenes so that like it was never just behind closed doors. Everybody knew what was going on. It was always like, you know, at that, it was that mentality, that lifestyle where everyone didn't go to work. They were all on welfare, having a bunch of kids, abusing the system, and just worried about what everybody else, the neighbors, doing. Because it was a Cambodian compound. We lived in Paradise in Central Valley in Modesto, of being around a lot of gang members, a lot of just like you're dealing with a lot of teenage pregnancy or high school dropouts, and you know we were always.
This was like a way of life.
A way of life, and so like that's why my dad was so protective over me, and but he also was like not the best provider as well because he was in like a gambler, and he took his money that he was he broke his back and he was on disability from work and got a settlement from his job, and like took the money and like had nothing to show for because he was gambling away, and like there was the one time I realized like you know the turning point of like where I knew I couldn't live with him anymore is when it was the end of my 8th grade year in the summer. I was at the home with my dad's in-laws, which are like they're close in age to me, and like we were watching TV and eating, and my dad came home and wanted some money because he lost, and he threw a fit, and because we weren't paying attention to him, he threw my brother across the room, which, you know, at that time he was only a toddler, to get our attention, and then, you know, got into like physical altercation with my stepmom's brothers, which were, you know, high school 20 age year range, and you know, I was tired of always seeing my dad get into physical altercation with people in the community. And what scared me the most was feeling like when he threatened my stepmom and their family, and like literally was gonna like try to like take us all out, take all of our lives out, and they left, and he had control over me but nobody else. And he told me,
this is like my child.
It's my child. Like,
everybody else can leave.
Everyone else can leave, but like, you know, this is my blood, you know, and I was scared to stay with him, even though my stepmom and their, you know, family, like they never considered me as a stepchild or a step family. They always saw like that I was just a part of their family, you know, and they wanted me to go with them, and I couldn't, and then so my dad was trying to plant a future with just me and him, and I was like, I can't live like this with him, and basically my stepmom had called the mental hospital on him, and
I'm gonna have my Laura moment, and I'm so sorry to cut you off because I feel like you're sharing such a big part of your life, but to our viewers out there, I feel like the average 13-year-old doesn't have so much emotional intelligence. In navigating such a difficult situation. You dealt with a parent that had mental health issues. You had a parent that had gambling addiction. You were in foster care?
Yeah, he had a lot of addiction.
You were in foster care?
Yeah, I was in
as
foster
a child.
care.
You had a parent that like ran across the country and said, "We're gonna start a new life." And
both parents wanted to start a new life, and innocent in a way.
yes, and it included her in it, in like their mess ups, to not say like the F word. But you're just like a thriver. Like you just pushed through, and you were like, "This is not the environment for me." At 13 years old.
Yeah, I was like, this can't be my life. Like I saw everything. Basically, that's what has made me to be like where I'm at now in life, is because of everything where I'm like, I can't go back to the way it was. I shift the paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
I broke that generational curse.
Absolutely. In so many different ways.
In so many different ways with no direction though.
Mm-hmm.
But, and fast forward and, you know, when it gets to there, but that goes back to my faith and how I got to my faith. At that time I didn't know, but, you know, I was just living life. But my dad used to give me money when he used to win gambling, because when he's nice and he's not drunk,
he's just like handing it out.
but he's always 99% of the time he's drunk or on painkillers or just like, you know, coping. Mm-hmm. He would give me money and I would save it up and tell him that I was, you know, I spent it already on things. But I remember
this is like your safety net.
It was my safety net.
At 13,
I planned to run away, and so when my aunt.
How long into it were you like, I'm like, this isn't?
Like, did you start saving from the beginning?
I've always been a saver.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I was cut off on the video at that time,
Mm-hmm.
but I had my first job learning how to like go to visit my dad's side of the family when I was in East Oakland, when I was with my mom. I think, yeah, it was a part of it's on there, but like I've always knew how to understood the value of $1 and how hard to work for it. And so when my dad gave me money, I always saved up and I never told people I had money. And so I remember my aunt Leela checked up on me one time and I just cried. I was like, she was like, "What's wrong?" You know, and she was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, I can't talk to you about it. My dad like did not let me go out the house. He didn't let me talk on the phone. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even go to the mall. And I was just like, I felt like a prisoner in my own house and my dad's house. And I was like,
did you ever feel that you were like, I was better off like with like these American parents that like were in DC? Yeah, you felt that way? And we were talking like
I felt more safe there.
That's like intense, I think. Like I feel like that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
And we were talking during the break how a lot of people that I've met that have come from similar backgrounds as Tina, they really utilize their trauma and like their lived experience as almost like an emotional crutch, where it's very difficult to navigate your way out of these situations and to be like, this is not the life that I want to live and I have to find a way out. A lot of people stay in it and then they're very angry with like their situation. And when you try to talk to them about it, they're like, well, you don't understand. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know that like X, Y, and Z has happened to me. And like,
they play the victim.
They do. It's very easy. It's very easy to sometimes be a victim rather than be a survivor. And I was thinking that when you were sharing a little bit about how you were sexually assaulted, which I feel like we didn't address and we don't have to, but I feel like that was such a, I don't know if that was such a like defining moment for you, because I feel like it also showed, like it also comes into play how you are such a survivor, like you just like thrive.
I was embarrassed and I was ashamed and I like kept it a secret.
All these years.
Yeah, I mean I told a few people, but I also like felt like when I did open up, it was used against me.
It was like weaponized.
Yeah, and so I just suppressed it, and I honestly I forgot about it.
You like tucked it away.
Yeah, and And I think also like I'm the type who like don't live in the past. I'm like it traumatized me so bad that I'm afraid to look in the past, and all I focus on is like forward thinking.
That's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
That's such a coping mechanism, because I feel like I'm the same way too. Where I'm just like, the past is not going to get me anywhere. Like, it's not going to help me progress or be a better person or elevate.
But most majority of people, they live in the past and they get stuck in the past and they don't want to move forward.
Absolutely.
And I feel like it's a way of life, it's a mentality thing. And I can tell you, like now, when I go visit my dad's side of the family, they're like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it's still the same. Nothing's changed.
It's still the same conversations.
Yeah, and I'm like, I couldn't see myself living like that, right? And fast forward, like I ran away from the house, and actually, Yaitu and Leela came to pick me up. I was just like,
Central Valley?
huh?
From the Central Valley?
I hid and
Angels.
And nobody knew I was running away. I didn't even tell one of my friends from school. I was like, can you just take my bag and put it in your house real quick? And she was like, okay, what's going on, you know? And then like Leela called and she's like, okay, we're on. I was like, just come and pull up onto the other side of the apartment complex. And then when they pulled up, I was like, hey, I told my friend, I was like, can I get my bag? And then I just left, and I tucked my head under the car, and I never came back.
You're like, and I never looked back again.
I never looked back, but I did though go back though. Fast forward later, but honestly, like, so then when I went back, I stayed with Leela and her sister Kathy for a little bit in Alameda, because that's when Yaitu and Tasiam, my grandpa, they moved to LA for a little bit. They had moved to LA for a little bit to help Puko and Mongtu.
Yeah, because I would go with them for the summer.
And so there was like not really a place for me to stay. And then Kathy, my other aunt, it was Leela's older sister, which is my mom's younger sister. She was just newly married and had a baby, and so that was temporary for me for a little bit. And then I ended up going, long story short, living with. So I was bouncing from house to house. Ever since after that, I was just like moving from. I was not stable. I didn't have a stable home, and then
instability became normalized.
And so then remember I told you my dad's aunt and uncle that owns the Cambodian restaurant in Berkeley. I ended up staying with them. I ended up living with them in San Paulo, and so I was going to Kennedy High School in Richmond.
Okay, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then I was working at the restaurant. So I was already working at that time, like, I was a waitress already, getting paid under the table.
You still in middle school, or did you make it to high school?
So remember, I was 8th grade already, graduated.
Okay.
So now I'm in high school. So this is
Okay.
freshman year, Kennedy, and I grew up very fast. And long story short, that's how I ended up meeting my ex-husband, Aaliyah's dad, my daughter's dad, was in Kennedy, and like we just was all in the wrong places, acting like we've grown, just exposed to too many things, and
trauma bonding. I feel like a lot of it is also trauma bonding, which is also like a topic that I feel like people don't talk about enough. Is that sometimes you really connect to someone that comes from very similar circumstances as you, and then you're just like, this is love. This is like the end all be all.
First love. Oh my gosh! And I was ride or die chick.
We love a 90s moment.
Yes.
Laura, you got something to say?
No, I
yes, no, I was so
I want to be Laura today. So we may see Panda.
She's coming?
No.
Oh.
She's gonna watch it though.
But yeah, and so that's how I met my ex. And long story short, with that, like we were living our best life. Nobody could have told me anything. And like I picked him from like my family and ended up like living with him for a little bit with his side of the family, his mom and stuff. And he grew up in the projects, raised in Richmond, dealt with like a divorced family, living with his mom. His mom was single with 3 kids, 3 boys, and then she got remarried. And Chan was just had survival mode and all his stuff, and like in juvenile and selling drugs and all this stuff. And also he had so much potential. It's just the lifestyle, right? And the product of the environment. And then we was just growing. We were around a lot of older people, exposed to people already who had cars, who had like access to things that 14-year-old, 15-year-old should not be having.
Yeah. And what were those older peer influences telling you?
Not telling. We was always kicking it.
It's kind of like an older sibling taking in the younger.
But what were the conversations like? Like, what were they like telling you guys?
It wasn't even telling. It was just like, we were always kicking it.
Y'all was like a part of it. Like,
we were just kicking it.
Y'all were just part of it.
We were just part of it.
Yeah.
Like, we would just be, like house parties, drinking, smoking, like just selling, like being around, that like
just being thrown into it and just
that we were
going with it.
I mean, like being around gang related things and stuff, just by the grace of God again, we were in the right place at the right time when we left, because people died and stuff.
People died, people get arrested.
Get arrested.
People catch case.
Yeah, and so I got into a fight, and his mom had left the country to Laos, and so I don't know why it wasn't smart to leave the teenagers home alone in the townhouse, and we had a lot of house parties and stuff, and like we were doing drugs and stuff. Like
y'all were doing what was on TV and like in the music videos, and
ecstasy was like a big thing that time, and like I tried it. I wasn't like addicted to ecstasy or anything. Like I tried shrooms. I smoked a lot of weed at that time. I drank a lot. We went to liquor stores that were selling us. I smoked a lot of cigarettes. I was addicted to cigarettes. I was smoking a lot. I was so thin. I was stressed out. Like I was like your size.
So I'm not a child.
but not healthy.
Your normal weight. That wasn't my normal.
That's
weight.
very small. See, I consider myself small, but when people like compare, like that's how I understand. Like, okay, I know I'm small.
Yeah.
That is small.
But this is your weight.
Yeah.
This is your. You've
this
always
is your
been
normal.
like this. Like I was like, I think 130, and then I went to like 90.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people thought I was like, anyways, and I didn't realize that.
It started to show.
I was like double zeros.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and but I was just surviving, and then had no future, didn't know what I was doing, and then
So walk me through how does the average person go through all this adversity in their life, and then say, I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna go to grad school, I'm gonna like build a career for myself, I'm gonna be successful. How do you go from this place to like literally like this place? Because in my eyes, that's like what we're looking at now.
What was that moment?
Yes.
I got pregnant.
Okay.
So I had gotten to a big fight. It was a big fight where like it was in the big townhouse. It was the projects, and like
when you were left without adult supervision.
We had like parties. People we weren't purposely having parties. People just knew to come to that house.
That it was like
party house.
Yeah.
And so I got into it with one of the homeboy's girl, and like physical altercation in the front, and like
Tina was the ratatata.
no, I wasn't. She just was very disrespectful, right? And like again, growing from where you come from, like you have to be,
you gotta stand for yourself.
Yeah, you gotta stand up for yourself. There, and so the boyfriend, the homie, like crazy. He's not alive anymore, but he was so he like damaged the property, like the whole property, and
how?
So he took a car and like just like did donuts and like ran into a bunch of like the fence and the like poles and stuff, and so we got evicted out of the place. And so his mom came back from Laos and got evicted.
She had no home.
And so we ended up moving to Missouri.
That's where Missouri comes into play.
So she had a brother, a distant brother. Her husband, her stepdad had a distant brother. And so basically it was us going to get away from our environment to start over.
Start new life. Which is nothing new for you.
She had to get him out of that environment because he was so deep in that environment. And so I followed him.
What was your thought process like? Like saying I'm gonna leave the Bay Area, which is like a big part of my life at this point. To be like,
honestly, I felt like at that point in my life, I was just going with the flow.
Yeah, I don't think he has any attachments, and you needed to.
I was just needed to
keep
home.
going.
I just needed to keep on going, and wherever that home or roof I could find, I just kept on going. And like, he was my stability at that time, my security. And so, and I was in love. Like, you can't tell me nothing. I chose him like, everybody told me not to be with him. At that time, it wasn't common to date Cambodian and Laotian. Like, it was like a biracial thing within our own sub communities. Like, people didn't, and now it's like, it's fine, like it's all blended.
It's normalized.
Yeah, it's normalized. But at that time, like, it was like.
You're like in, what year is this? For our listeners, watchers?
Well, I was 14, 15, the 2000, 90s, late 90s, 2000.
So, just to reiterate.
You guys weren't even born yet. Wait.
Tina,
no,
we were born.
Okay.
We were born, honey.
You guys were in what grade?
Elementary.
Oh gosh.
Tina was 14 years old in 1990 something. She had already been to DC. She had been in the Bay Area, and she had traveled to
Central Valley.
the Central Valley, Modesto. I forgot Modesto.
Back to the Bay.
And back to the Bay, and then traveled to Missouri.
Yeah, and so
at 14.
Yeah, so we went there, and then that was a whole culture shock. Oh my gosh,
Missouri.
I was like, we are going back at the time. We saw Confederate flags. I've never seen a Confederate flag. I've never seen an Amish person. I don't even know about Amish Paradise through Cooley. I've never seen Walmart. I was like, yes. I didn't know what Amish Paradise was. He was making fun of Amish people. And I was like, this is real Amish people living. And then I was like, I've never seen so many Walmarts. It was like
not
Walmart.
The Walmart.
Walmart was like the malls.
I love a Walmart.
No, but it was like every corner, literally. And it was like country after country road. It was like just farm road. It was nothing.
Lori, how long? Sorry, subtopic. How long are you gonna nurse back last? Where's Panda so she can like help me tag team?
As Delicious calls it, 5 business days.
Is Delicious gonna come on the podcast?
I don't know.
Stay tuned. So, sorry, because we gotta make sure our segments are.
Did it get cut off?
Yeah, so then fast forward, like lived in Missouri.
She goes to Missouri.
That didn't work out that long because I was like, anyway, so then when Chan turned 18, we ended up coming back to the Bay Area for a little bit. And so we were bouncing from home to home. At that time, we were living with my mom and back in Oakland for a short period of time. I got cut off when I shared about my brother getting in the foster care system. Okay, so they got put in the foster care system when I was living with my dad at 13, and I felt responsible because I felt
felt guilty.
I felt guilty because like if I would have stayed, then they would have like been able to. I would have been able to protect them and be a voice for them.
Which was not your role as the big sister.
And then, so then we ended up coming back to the Bay Area. Long story short, like we were like living with my mom for a little bit, and then we went to live with my dad. And don't ask me why I ended up going back to the same cycle, but we basically.
I'm sorry. Sometimes.
It's a cycle you knew.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're familiar. You're familiar.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, I would rather go back to something that I am familiar with, that I know, that I can navigate, than to be like, let me like learn something completely new and start from scratch. And like, it's like unknown. So like.
Yeah. But it made it worse because now I go back and then I have my ex, at that time, my boyfriend with me. So, you know, my dad, me running away from my dad and then coming back and living with him and bringing my boyfriend at that time, you know, they consider that as my husband in our culture. So like we're grown at this point now. And so my dad was putting the pressure on my ex
to step up
and be a man and be a provider. And I basically, not knowing at that time, now I do, like I fell for somebody that was exactly like my dad. So him and my ex and my dad like butt heads a lot. And then when I found out I was pregnant, I hid my pregnancy when I was living with my dad because I was stressed out enough being in a relationship with my ex because it was an unhealthy relationship, and I just wanted him to better himself, but he was always like getting it back into the same type of environment with like drugs, gangs, not being able to stick to a job.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you waited to disclose the pregnancy because you were just like, sometimes in my experience, I feel like, and I was like I grew up with like a lot of women, right? So I feel like the men take a lot longer to mature and to like get it together. Do you feel like you waited to disclose the pregnancy because you were just like, let me just let him process and like let him get it together, and then present him in like a really good light, and then go from there?
My dad?
No, the Chan.
Oh, Chan knew I was pregnant.
No, but I'm saying you, like in like intuition, did you say like, let me just hold off on like disclosing
sure
the pregnancy?
You and him is good before letting your dad know.
Oh no, I was still scared of my dad.
Okay.
Like, like he was still manipulative, still controlling. It was more of like, I didn't want to disappoint him, even though like
it was more of like a you thing.
My thing of like.
It had nothing to do with like Chan.
Nothing to do with Chan.
Okay.
I think we both were just like, like just naive and young. Like, okay, we're about to have a baby, but I don't understand like the full extent of having a baby and the responsibility of having a baby.
And you didn't want additional stress.
I didn't want additional stress with my dad, and I think when my dad finally, this is how I knew my dad found out. They finally told him.
Who's they?
So like my grandma. So I was living with my grandma, my in-law, my dad's mother-in-law and father-in-law at that time, and he came. They finally told him because I told them not to tell him. And when they finally, I couldn't hide anymore. I was like 8-9 months at that, almost 9 months. I was gonna deliver, so they're gonna have to tell him, right? He came with like sour fruit and gave me some sour fruit. And that in our culture, when you're pregnant, you crave sour fruit. Oh. So I think that was like that piece of like, you should.
It's a peace offering.
Peace offering, like you should, if you're craving here, I brought you something, and like,
How old is your dad at the time? I'm sorry.
No, he was like in his 40s.
So
he was born here in the States?
My dad?
Yeah.
No, he was born in Cambodia.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like, I'm 40 having a grandchild.
My dad is Cambodian and Vietnamese, so he has that like Vietnamese in him. Yeah, and so.
He brought you the sour grapes?
Sour fruit.
Sour fruit, sorry.
Yeah, and so then basically he was also moving out of Paradise and renting a house, and he wanted us to move with like the peacemaking part, but also like he had his own motives. He wanted us to help him with rent and to move into this house. And so he wanted Chan to like step up, like be the man, be the household, and like, help him be a provider of the household. And so, but when we moved there, I had Aaliyah, and then when we end up, then they ended up finding another house, and they wanted to move into another house, a bigger house. And my dad and my ex got to a physical altercation, and so then we ended up living with. That was I was 15. I turned 16 after I had Aaliyah a month afterwards, and then it was like Aaliyah was just like a month old, and then we ended up moving to live with my Chan's old he was doing construction, so his coworker, and then the coworker was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Him and his girlfriend, his baby, toddler. They had a child, and so we rented a room, and that was a turning point in my life because we lived there, and the power got turned off, the electricity got turned off. It was in April, but luckily it was kind of like getting hot around that time, and then when Chan and his coworker went to work, the girl I realized was a drug addict, so she didn't pay the bills, the money that we gave her. She was using drugs, and then I was like begging. I had a toddler, so I needed to have running water, hot water, and like, electricity to like
the basic necessities.
The basic stuff. And then so like, one time I remember me and Chan had to steal like milk formula. I was breastfeeding, but like, and then we had to ask, like on the other side of the apartment complex there was a warehouse, and so I had to like ask them to borrow electricity by using like the orange cord and putting it through our window to give it to them so we could plug like a microwave or like a lamp or something. Like we used that one cord, and I was so thankful because I was just like, I just had a baby, I'm sorry, we're like trying to pay our bills right now, blah blah, our rent, we're getting paid.
We're trying
like, all the excuses, and they were just like, I said
we paid our bills, but the drug addict roommate that we live with didn't pay the bills.
But like I asked her to use the utility, to borrow the utility for one day, but like it ended up being like a week. I don't know. Anyway, so then
the orange cord was like the orange cord was a week.
Huh?
The orange cord.
I was asking. I was just asking if we can borrow for like a day, but
oh, okay.
they let us.
a week.
I know.
They never took it up. They never unplugged it.
Okay.
It's like
they were some real ones.
They were some like okay, like
they were some real
you just
ones.
have understanding. Yeah, they were understanding. That's what I'm saying. You just never know when at those points.
God sends you angels.
Right. And I feel like also with when I had my daughter, she was my angel. She was our turning point. She made me want to have a better life for her. I couldn't see myself again back into that situation. I was like, I cannot raise my child in these environments anymore.
Because of your lived experiences.
Because of my lived
experience. You were just like, I
needed
don't want
to break that cycle. And how can I break the cycle? And that's when I was like,
let me get it together.
Get it together. If he and like I had to like I've always been like that person like trying to get my ex to understand like we got like I was always the decision maker trying to make moves, right? And so what happened? I was like you know teenage mom. I was on welfare. I was applying for welfare at that time. I was so desperate because at that time Chan's mom was still in Missouri at that time, right? We left her. She still stayed there. But I was like, I basically told the social worker, I was like, look, I just need some money at this point. I need to get out of this environment that I'm in. If you can give me like, you know, an emergency fund, I need, like we have, you know, a place that we can go in Missouri. We just need enough money to get on the Greyhound to get there. And so she gave me this emergency fund. And I
love a social worker.
I called, but also I was like, how did I know you need to ask her that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that. Like, I was desperate, right? And so I told Chan's mom, I said, we just had a baby. She didn't even know we had a baby. And so I was like, can you, and she's always saw me as a daughter. She's never had a daughter. So she always loved me as her daughter. She knew her son was always at fault, but she always was like.
She had a soft spot for you.
She was like, you're my daughter. Like, you know. And she always knew, like, she always told him, like, if you keep on treating her the way you treat her, you're never going to find somebody that's going to love you and pull it with your bullshit. Right? And like I just told her, I was like, I told her my plan. I was like, I'm gonna do better, we're gonna do better, we're gonna go there and save up and work and get our own place and finish school and all this stuff. I was like, can you just please let us like live with you? I apologize for us like leaving and all that stuff. And I was able to get some money to get on the Greyhound.
Because you still.
So you called her.
Yeah.
You're on the phone.
I talked to her, not him.
Because you guys had lived in her home and then like fucked it up that like she got evicted.
When she was
in the townhouse. But then when they went to Missouri, they actually they rented this new development. They moved into this new development with like a nice new home. They were renting this nice new home, so they had the space. But we just wanted to leave because we were like, this is Missouri. This is nothing for us here. Like we just young, we just want to have fun.
But you also have to like prove yourselves so that she could like take you back in.
Yeah.
And now you have a child.
But now that she knew she had a granddaughter, that was her first granddaughter.
That was
her soft spot.
Yes.
But I always told her my plan, and I always stuck to the plan.
And she knew you were more serious than her child, than her own child.
And so we bought a plane ticket, a Greyhound ticket, and that was a one-way ticket, and we never looked back.